Working the night shift at a gas station is one of those jobs that sounds easy on paper. Sit behind a counter, ring up cigarettes and energy drinks, maybe restock some shelves when things are slow. But anyone who's actually worked those graveyard hours, those long stretches between midnight and 6 a.m. when the rest of the world is asleep, knows it's a different reality entirely. You're alone in a fluorescent lit box, surrounded by darkness, servicing the kinds of people who are awake at 3 in the morning. Long-haul truckers, insomniacs, third-shift factory workers, and sometimes people you really hope drive away and never come back. You learn to trust your instincts, to recognize when someone's energy is wrong, and to know which corners of your store feel safe and which don't. My name is Chris, and I work the overnight shift at a stop-and-go gas station on Highway 412, outside of Tulsa, Oklahoma, for almost 2 years. The station sat at a lonely intersection where the highway met a rural route that led to several small farming communities. During the day, it was busy enough, locals getting coffee before work, travelers filling up on their way through Oklahoma. But at night, especially after midnight, hours could pass between customers. The building itself was old, built sometime in the 70s and renovated poorly multiple times over the decades. It had that particular smell all old gas stations have, a mixture of stale coffee, cleaning chemicals, motor oil, and something indefinable that seems to seep into the walls over years of 24-hour operation. The incident I'm about to describe happened in January 2023, during one of the coldest weeks Oklahoma had seen in years. Temperatures had dropped into the single digits, rare for our area, and the roads were icy enough that most people who didn't absolutely need to be out were staying home. My shift that night started normally enough at 11 p.m., taking over from the evening clerk, a college student named Bryce, who seemed relieved to be leaving. "It's dead tonight," he told me as he grabbed his coat. "Only had maybe 5 customers the last 3 hours. Oh, and the walk-in freezer's been making weird noises. I think the compressor might be going out. Might want to call maintenance in the morning." I nodded, not particularly concerned. The walk-in freezer was always making some kind of noise. It was ancient, probably original to the building, and barely kept things frozen on the best days. For those unfamiliar with gas station operations, the walk-in freezer is exactly what it sounds like. A large refrigerated room in the back of the store where we kept overflow inventory, ice cream, frozen foods, and anything else that needed to stay frozen. Ours was about 8 feet by 10 feet, with metal shelving lining the walls and a heavy insulated door that locked from the outside with a bolt latch and a padlock. There was no lock on the inside, just a safety release handle painted bright red that would let you push the door open from within in case you got locked in accidentally. The company policy was to keep it locked whenever we weren't actively restocking, to prevent shoplifters from hiding in there or stealing expensive items. I'd been in that freezer hundreds of times over the past 2 years and never thought twice about it until that night. Block 1. The first signs. The first few hours of my shift passed in the usual routine of overnight work. I restocked cigarettes behind the counter, wiped down the coffee machines, and swept the floors while a playlist of 80s rock played through the overhead speakers at a volume just loud enough to make the emptiness feel less oppressive. Around 1:30 a.m., a trucker came in for diesel fuel and an energy drink, the first customer I'd seen in over an hour. We made brief small talk about the weather. He was heading east and hoping the roads would improve once he got into Arkansas. After he left, the silence returned, broken only by the hum of refrigerators, the occasional tick of the heating system, and the distant sound of semis passing on the highway. It was around 2:15 a.m. when I first heard it, a sound that didn't belong to the normal background noise of the store. I was behind the counter scrolling through my phone when a distinct knock echoed from somewhere in the back area. 3 knocks, evenly spaced, deliberate. I looked up, confused. The back area included the storage room, the utility closet, the bathroom, and the walk-in freezer. There shouldn't be anyone back there. I was alone in the store, and I'd checked the bathroom an hour ago during my rounds. I set my phone down and listened, but the sound didn't repeat. After a moment, I shrugged it off. Old buildings make noise, pipes knock, metal expands and contracts. Nothing to worry about. But 20 minutes later, it happened again. 3 knocks, same rhythm, same volume, definitely coming from the back. This time I got up and walked toward the storage area, flipping on the lights as I went. The fluorescent tubes flickered to life, illuminating the cramped space filled with boxes of chips, candy, and other supplies. Everything looked normal. I checked the bathroom, empty. Checked the utility closet where we kept cleaning supplies and the breaker box, nothing out of place. That left the walk-in freezer. I approached the heavy insulated door and stood there for a moment, listening. Nothing. Just the steady hum of the compressor. I put my hand on the cold metal surface of the door and felt the vibration of the machinery. Still nothing unusual. I turned to walk back to the counter when I heard it again, and this time there was no mistaking where it came from. 3 knocks, clear and sharp, from inside the freezer. My heart rate spiked. I spun back around and stared at the door. The padlock was still in place, hanging from the bolt latch exactly as it should be. Nobody could be inside. The freezer had been locked since yesterday afternoon, when the day manager had checked inventory. I'd confirmed it was locked when I'd arrived for my shift, same as I did every night. "Hello?" I called out, feeling foolish even as I did it. No response, just the hum of the compressor. I stood there for a long moment, debating whether to unlock the freezer and look inside. Every rational part of my brain said it was probably just the pipes or some kind of pressure buildup in the refrigeration system. But something about those knocks, the deliberate spacing, the consistent volume, made them sound intentional. I decided to call my manager, Dan, even though it was the middle of the night. He answered on the 4th ring, his voice thick with sleep. "Chris, what's wrong?" I explained about the knocking sounds coming from inside the freezer, immediately feeling stupid as I said it out loud. There was a long pause. "Did you check if someone's actually in there?" Dan asked. "It's locked from the outside," I said. "Has been locked since yesterday. Nobody could have gotten in there." Another pause. "Chris, if there's someone in that freezer, and they've been locked in since yesterday afternoon, they'd be dead by now. But yeah, go ahead and check. Might be the compressor dying. If it is, we'll need to call for emergency repair before everything thaws." He yawned. "Call me back if it's anything serious. Otherwise, I'll deal with it in the morning." I hung up and stood in front of the freezer door, keys in hand. The rational part of my brain was still dominant. This was silly. There was nobody in there. It was just machinery or pipes or something equally mundane. But my hands were shaking slightly as I unlocked the padlock and unlatched the bolt. The heavy door swung open with a soft hiss of escaping cold air, and I was hit immediately by the sub-zero temperature inside. The automatic light flickered on, illuminating metal shelves stocked with boxes of frozen foods, bags of ice and other inventory. Everything was as it should be. I stepped inside, my breath immediately visible in the freezing air. Nothing out of place, nobody hiding, just a normal, empty freezer. I checked behind the shelving units, even though there was barely enough space for a person to fit. Nothing. I was about to leave when I noticed something on the floor near the back wall that I hadn't seen from the doorway. Scratch marks in the ice that had formed on the concrete floor, long gouges that looked like someone had been dragging their fingers across the surface, trying to find purchase on the slippery ground. Block 2. The descent into fear. I backed out of the freezer quickly, my pulse pounding in my ears. Those scratch marks were fresh. The ice they'd been carved into was clear, not clouded with frost like the older ice buildup on the floor. Someone had been in that freezer recently scratching at the floor, and the only explanation I could think of was that they'd been trying to stay conscious, trying to fight off hypothermia by moving, by doing something, anything. But that didn't make sense. The freezer had been locked. I'd confirmed it when I arrived. Even if someone had somehow gotten locked in yesterday afternoon, they'd be dead by now. Hypothermia would have killed them within hours in temperatures that cold. I relocked the freezer, my hands shaking worse now, and returned to the counter. I tried to focus on the security camera monitors we had behind the register. We had 4 cameras, one covering the parking lot and fuel pumps, one on the front entrance and counter area, one covering the aisles of merchandise, and one in the back storage area pointed at the walk-in freezer door. I rewound the footage from the back camera, going back to when my shift started at 11 p.m. For hours, the footage showed nothing, just a static view of the closed freezer door and the empty storage area. But then, at exactly 2:16 a.m., right around when I'd first heard the knocking, something strange happened on the footage. The image flickered, went to static for about 5 seconds, then came back. And when it came back, for just a fraction of a second, I could have sworn I saw the freezer door standing open. I rewound it again, playing it in slow motion. The flicker, the static. And yes, there it was. 1 frame, maybe 2, showing the freezer door ajar, though the resolution was too poor to see if anything was inside. Then the static cleared, and the door was closed again, locked as it should be. I felt my skin crawl. Either the camera was malfunctioning, or something had happened during that static burst that the camera hadn't properly recorded. I checked the other camera angles for the same time period. They all showed the same static burst at the exact same moment, 2:16 a.m. Whatever had caused the interference had affected all 4 cameras simultaneously. 3 knocks came again from the back, and this time I heard something else underneath them. A faint dragging sound like something being pulled across metal shelving. I grabbed my phone and dialed Dan again. This time he answered more quickly, annoyance clear in his voice. "Chris, I thought I said to call if it's serious." "Dan, something's wrong," I interrupted, trying to keep my voice steady. "The cameras show the freezer door opening during a static burst, but it's locked now." I heard more knocking, and when I checked inside, there were fresh scratch marks on the floor. "I think someone might have been locked in there, or still is, or—" "Chris, slow down," Dan said, his tone shifting from annoyed to concerned. "You're telling me you think someone's in the freezer right now, and you already checked it?" "Yes, I checked, and nobody was there. But the scratch marks are new, Dan, and the sounds keep happening." Dan was quiet for a moment. "Okay, here's what you're going to do. Lock yourself in the bathroom if you need to feel safe, and call the police. Tell them you think someone might be trying to break in, or might be hiding somewhere in the store. Don't go back to that freezer. Don't go into the back area at all. I'm getting dressed and heading over there now. Should be there in 20 minutes. But call the cops first." I thanked him and hung up, then immediately dialed 911. The dispatcher who answered sounded bored until I mentioned I was alone at the gas station and hearing strange noises from inside a locked freezer. "Sir, is the door still locked?" she asked. "Yes, I checked and relocked it." "And you looked inside and confirmed nobody was there?" "Yes, but there are scratch marks." "Sir, stay on the line. I'm sending a deputy to your location. Estimated arrival time is about 15 minutes. I stayed behind the counter, phone still connected to 911, watching the security monitors with growing dread. Nothing moved in the store. Nothing showed on the parking lot camera except the occasional car passing on the highway. But every few minutes, those 3 knocks echoed from the back, and each time they sounded slightly different, sometimes louder, sometimes softer, sometimes accompanied by that dragging sound. At one point, I swore I heard something that sounded almost like scratching on the other side of the freezer door, fingernails on metal, desperate and persistent. The dispatcher stayed on the line with me, asking occasionally if I was okay, if I saw anyone, if the sounds continued. I answered mechanically, my eyes fixed on the monitor showing the back area. Then, at 2:47 a.m., the cameras all went to static again. This time the static lasted longer, maybe 15 seconds, and when the image cleared, my blood went cold. The monitor showing the back area now displayed the freezer door standing wide open, the padlock hanging from the bolt latch, swaying slightly as if it had just been moved. But I could see the door from where I was standing at the counter. I could see directly down the hallway to the back area, and the door was still closed and locked. Whatever the camera was showing me wasn't real-time footage. It was something else, something impossible. The cameras are malfunctioning, I told the dispatcher, my voice shaking now. They're showing the freezer door open, but it's not. It's still locked. I can see it from here. Sir, remain calm. The deputy is 3 minutes away. Do not approach the freezer. Stay where you are. Block 3, the revelation and escape. The 3 minutes waiting for the deputy felt like hours. I stood behind the counter, gripping my phone so hard my knuckles went white, alternating between watching the security monitors and staring down the hallway at the actual freezer door. The knocking had stopped, replaced by an eerie silence that was somehow worse. No customers came in. The highway outside was completely empty, unusual even for this time of night. It felt like the entire world had contracted down to just me and this gas station and whatever was happening in that freezer. When the patrol car finally pulled into the parking lot, lights flashing, I felt a wave of relief so intense I almost cried. Deputy Morrison, a man in his 50s who'd been with the county sheriff's department for decades, came through the front door with his hand resting on his service weapon. "Evening, Chris," he said, his voice calm and professional. "Dispatch said you're hearing noises from a locked freezer." I nodded and quickly explained everything, the knocking, the scratch marks, the camera malfunctions, all of it. Deputy Morrison listened without interrupting, his expression neutral, though I saw his eyes flick to the security monitors when I mentioned the footage showing the door open. "All right, let's take a look," he said. We walked together to the back area, and I showed him the freezer. The padlock was still in place, exactly as I'd left it. Deputy Morrison tested it, confirming it was secured. "You have the key?" he asked. I handed it to him, and he unlocked it, then unlatched the bolt and pulled open the heavy door. The freezer light came on, illuminating the same interior I'd seen earlier. Shelves, inventory, frost-covered walls. We both stepped inside, the deputy shining his flashlight into corners and behind shelves. The scratch marks on the floor were still there, and Deputy Morrison crouched down to examine them. "These are recent," he said quietly. "Very recent. Made within the last few hours." He stood and looked around the freezer more carefully. That's when I noticed something I hadn't seen before, probably because I'd been too panicked during my first inspection. On the back wall of the freezer, partially hidden behind a stack of ice cream boxes, there was a small metal panel, maybe 2 feet square, set flush with the wall. It looked like an access panel for maintenance, the kind that would lead to the refrigeration equipment, and it was slightly ajar. Deputy Morrison saw it at the same time I did. He moved the boxes aside and pulled the panel fully open, revealing a dark space behind it. His flashlight beam revealed a narrow crawl space, just big enough for a person to squeeze through. The crawl space led somewhere. I could see it extended back into darkness, probably running between the walls or under the floor to the utility areas of the building. "Someone's been using this to get in and out," Deputy Morrison said, his voice tense now. He spoke into his radio, calling for backup, then turned to me. "Chris, we need to get you out of this freezer right now. If someone's been accessing this space, they could still be in the walls." We quickly exited the freezer, and the deputy positioned himself between me and the back area, his weapon now drawn. 2 more patrol cars arrived within minutes, and the 3 deputies began a systematic search of the entire building. The bathroom, the storage areas, the utility spaces, even the drop-ceiling tiles in the main store area. It was during this search that they found him. In the utility space, accessed through a crawl space under the building, connecting to that access panel in the freezer, a man, probably in his 40s, dressed in filthy clothes and clearly suffering from mental illness or drug addiction or both. He was surrounded by makeshift bedding, Empty food containers and other evidence that he'd been living in that crawl space for some time, sneaking into the store through the freezer access panel whenever the freezer was locked and the store was quiet. The scratch marks on the floor, the knocking sounds, they were his attempts to get out after the access panel had gotten stuck or frozen shut, trapping him in the freezer. But what made my blood run cold was what else they found in his little hiding space. Photographs, dozens of them. Pictures taken through the gaps in the walls and ceiling, showing the inside of the store, showing me working behind the counter, showing previous employees going about their shifts, completely unaware they were being watched. Deputy Morrison explained to me later that the man had likely been living in the crawl space for weeks, maybe months, entering through an unsecured access point outside the building and creating his own little hidden world within the walls. He'd been stealing food from the freezer during quiet hours, watching the employees, and generally existing in the shadows of the building. The cameras had malfunctioned because he'd been tampering with the wiring in the walls, though they couldn't say whether it was intentional or accidental. The real horror, Morrison told me, was that if I hadn't heard the knocking that night, if I hadn't called it in, there was no telling how long the man would have continued living there, watching, waiting, possibly planning something worse. Conclusion: I quit my job at the Stop and Go that same night, turned in my keys to Dan when he arrived, told him I was done, and walked out. I couldn't imagine ever going back into that building, knowing someone had been in the walls, watching me for who knows how long. The man they found was taken to a hospital for psychiatric evaluation, and I later learned he'd been reported missing by family members in Missouri 3 years earlier. He'd been drifting, living on the streets and in hidden spaces, his mental illness untreated and worsening. The gas station company sealed up all the access points, installed better security, and added extra cameras. They offered me a raise and a transfer to a different location if I wanted to stay. I declined. What haunts me most isn't the knowledge that someone was living in the walls, as terrifying as that was. It's those photographs they found. Pictures of me counting the register, pictures of me sitting behind the counter on my phone, pictures of me taking my break in the back room. He'd been watching everything, learning my routines, my habits, and on one of the photographs, written in pen across the bottom, was a message: soon. I don't know what it meant. The man was too far gone mentally to give coherent answers when they questioned him. Maybe it meant nothing, just the rambling of a sick mind. Or maybe I got lucky that night, that the access panel got stuck and trapped him before whatever he'd been planning could happen. I work at a bank now, 9 to 5, surrounded by people and security systems and cameras that actually work. I don't do night shifts anymore. Can't even drive past a gas station at night without my heart rate spiking, without wondering what might be watching from the shadows. Sometimes I still wake up at night thinking I hear knocking, 3 deliberate knocks, evenly spaced, and for a moment I'm back in that fluorescent-lit store, alone, except for whatever was hiding in the walls. If you work a night shift anywhere, especially somewhere you're alone, pay attention to the sounds you hear, know what's normal and what isn't, and if you hear knocking from somewhere there shouldn't be anyone, don't ignore it, because sometimes the scariest monsters aren't supernatural. Sometimes they're just people, broken people, hiding in places we never think to look, watching and waiting for their moment. That's the real horror, not ghosts or demons, but the realization that you were never as alone as you thought you were.